Hello, so in this video I want to talk about how we can create real-time databases in Unity. And one of the options we can use is Firebase, which is essentially a database system made by Google. It has a lot of other functionality as well, like authentication and analytic, and as well as the database. So here I have an empty Unity project, so I haven't done anything to it yet. So we want to be able to set up a real-time database in this Unity project and see how it can be done. So first thing we want to do is that I want to create a new project. So I'm gonna go here, let's call it my Unity database, and now you can name it whatever your project is. So I'm gonna click continue. Now here it's gonna ask, do you wanna enable Google Analytic? It depends. For now I'm actually not gonna use this, so I'm just gonna disable it. So I'm gonna click on create. Now while it's doing it, we're gonna need some information from our Unity project. So I'm gonna go to build setting, and let's go to the let's click continue. So here you need to select what platform are you gonna this Firebase project is gonna be used at. So we're gonna select Unity, and now it also gives you the option to register the app. So if you are developing your app for Android platform or iOS or both, you can fill this up. And the way you can fill it up, if you go hover over it, it gives you the information where you can find this. So I'm just gonna go to my player setting, gonna scroll down. So here is my bundle identifier for iOS, and for now I'm gonna call this my test app. The name is not actually, I'm gonna leave it empty, it's not that important. And for the Android is the same thing as well. And let's check, it should be here. Build setting, player setting, other setting, bundle identifier. So our app doesn't have any, it's actually this one which is here. So I'm just gonna copy it, put it here, and now, so I don't need this anymore, I can register my app. Now it's gonna give us two files to download. So the first one is the settings. So if you only done Android, you're only gonna get the first one. So these are gonna be the setting for Android platform, and the other one is gonna be the setting for iOS. So I'm gonna download both of them, and we're just gonna drag them and add them to our project. So they're here in my assets. So then I'm gonna click next. Now it says to download the Firebase Sdk. So I already done that before, so I already have downloaded it. Once you download it, you get like it's fairly large, so it's gonna take some while. And then you go to .NET 4, and there is some option, different packages that you can use. And here it just says to import it and add the package that you want to your project. So this is fine. So now we can go to our console. Now here what I want to do is that I want to go to build real-time database, and I want to create a database. So you can choose a location, so I just leave it to US, and then click next. and then here start in lock mode. That is fine. Just gonna click on enable. Here what we want to do is we want to change the rules, so we want to be able to read and write data. So I'm going to change these to false. So from false to true. So I want to be able to read and also write data. So I'm going to publish this. This is fine. Okay. So we are done with setting up our Firebase project. So I'm going to go to Unity. Now we want to, for this video, we want to create a database. So I'm gonna in the Unity packages that we have for Firebase Sdk, what you want to find is that Firebase database Unity package. So what I'm gonna do, I'm just gonna drag this to my project. Now it's gonna import it, so just import everything. So I'm gonna click on import. So now I have all of the Firebase file as well. I'm just going to change my Unity layout as well because I don't. Is it done? I think it's still importing. Okay, I think it's finished. So let's just change. I'm gonna use this layout. So in my project, I want to create a new folder for my scripts. So let's call it scripts. And we want two files. So our first one gonna be our database manager, and the second one is gonna be user, and I'm gonna explain what each of these gonna do. So here's the database manager and here's the user. So database manager, basically we're gonna create our database here, write method for creating new user, getting their data and writing data, and this is gonna define what our user is gonna have. So basically the properties or the data that you want to record and save on your database, you need to define them here. So what we want to do, you need to get rid of all of this, so we don't need, it's not gonna be a mono behavior, it's gonna just be a normal C# class. So I'm gonna remove all of these. So for this example, let's say that my user is gonna have a name. So I'm gonna say public string name, and we can also have the user is gonna have a score. So public string score. And now we want to create a constructor for our user. So I'm going to do public user string name and string score. And then we want to assign the value of the name here to passing function here. So name, and the same is score equals to score. So here's our user class, and this is the constructor for it. And what constructor does, if you're not familiar, it basically allows us, by calling this, we can create as many as user class as we want. So it's just gonna make our life easier. And now let's go to our database. So we're gonna need to import some of the things. So the first one is Firebase, and then using Firebase.database as well. I think for now this is fine. So let's create, first we want to create a reference to our database. So I'm gonna call this database reference and name it the same thing as well. So this is right now is empty, so we need to assign it. So here I'm gonna say my database reference is equals to Firebase database dot default instance dot root reference. Now these codes are basically Firebase has documentation which guide you to setting it up. So I'm doing it based on that. That's how I know how to set it up. So what this does is get the root reference location of the database. So that's good. And the next thing we want to do is that we're not gonna really use the void update, so I can delete it, and then I can create a public void write. I can call it write new user. So this is gonna create new user for us, and then I can call my class user and give it a name. So I can just say user is equals to new user, and now we need to pass some values. So I can use what I want to do is I want to get the values from my UI and assign it here. So I'm going to use the text mesh pro, and I'm gonna create two values here. So I want to access it from inspector. So it's gonna be input field, so name, and another input field for a score. So this is how I'm gonna get the values. And that's fine. So now I can say the name text value and the score text value. So I'm gonna pass it through our constructor to create a new user class, and then I want to do string JSON equals to JSON utility. So we are basically what we do next is that we want to parse our class as a JSON file so we can transfer it over. So to JSON, I'm gonna pass the user, and now we want to pass all of this information to our database since it's converted to JSON. So database reference dot child, and here I'm going to type users. So this sending system is again as according to documentation. So this is how you write it, and then here we need to pass an ID for our user, some way to identify, okay, which user is this user, so the program knows where to write this data. So what we want to do, we want to also have a user ID. Now for now I'm just gonna assign a user ID to the unique identifier of the device, but based on your program you can change that. Depends how you want to set it up. Well, one way of doing it, as showing it the demo in here, I'm just going to use a user unique identifier. So what this is basically, each device has its own ID number, so it knows that, okay, if I'm saving this data on my computer, it gonna get saved as my own computer. So if somebody else saves the data, it's gonna create a separate data and doesn't rewrite it on top of the already existence one. So system info dot device unique identifier. So this is assigning a unique user ID based on device identifier. So here I can pass my user ID, and then we set the raw JSON value and then pass the JSON as well. Now we can test, actually we can test our code. So for now I'm gonna minimize this. Let's make a new empty object. So this is gonna be the database manager. I'm gonna assign the code here, and now let's create our UI. So gonna make a canvas. Let's add some color to it. So I'm gonna add a panel, gonna make it like black, and then we want 2 input field. So actually here, so name input field, and I can make this bigger so it's very small. So for the placeholder, now you're gonna, if you're on a Mac, you're gonna get this message. So what you need to do is that you need to go to your security. Let me cancel this. You need to click on to allow the app to run. So that's fine. And now because I'm using TextMesh Pro, it's saying that I need to import it, so I'm gonna just import it. Let's see, import, yeah. Okay, so TextMesh Pro got imported. I can make this text bigger because it's really small. Okay, so this is gonna be inter name 40. I can copy the font number here so it's the same, and I can duplicate this, and let's call the next one score. Let's just reposition things a bit. Okay, and this one is gonna be inter score. Now I can we don't need this one here. Now I can assign the values. So I'm gonna drag the name to this one and the score to this one here, and let's make a button as well to save our data. I'm gonna create a button. This is gonna be save. I can make it large. Now I can basically say what this button is gonna do. So I'm gonna click on plus. So when we click on the button, I want to call the write new user function that I created. So now if I test our app, let's see. So I can say Nemo and the score like 100. If we click save, so it's gonna give us error. So let's see what's going on. what we need to do is that we need to reimport our database URL, so it's not getting connected to it. So what you want to do is that you want to go to project setting and then come down here, download Google service JSON, and same as the iOS service, and then go here, so I'm gonna delete the one I had previously, and then I'm gonna re-download them. Okay, this one, and then I'm gonna come to my project, delete the old one, and just re-import them. And now if we test this, so Nemo 100. So I clicked on save. You see now I'm not getting any error message anymore. The reason you need to re-import it is because we created the real-time database after we import them, so it did not have the information of our database inside the settings. And now if you go to real database, if you open the user, you see this is my unique identifier, and under this I have my name and my score. And this is basically my computer identifier. So if I use another computer and save data, it's gonna create a separate user for it. So our data is getting saved, which is fine. And now what we want to do next is that I want to go back to the code. So we know how to save data. Now we need to find a way to get the data back. And the way you do that is that, so the data that I have is the name and score in this example. So you need to define which data point of the user you want to get back and write function for that. So this one is gonna be first I want to get back the user name, so I want to create a enumerator get user name. Now we want to use action, so I'm gonna import system for C# and then type action, and the name is type my username data is a string, so I'm going to type string, and this is going to be a callback, so just call it on callback. So let's create our user data. So user data is going to be equals to database reference child users, and what now you need to define, okay, which user data do you want to get. So it's gonna be, in this case, it's gonna be my user ID, and then you want to say, okay, which data point do you want to get, and the data point I want to get then is name. And this is very important, so these naming, it needs to be exactly the same. So here I have underscore name, and in the database is also saved as underscore name, and when you want to get it back, it needs to be the same as well. So I want to get the value, and now we want to wait until we get the result. So return new wait until user, we want to make sure that we have received the user data, so user data is completed. And now it's just gonna do a check, so make sure we got the data back. So if the user data is not null, we want to save the result. So user data result, and now I want to just change it as a string, so I can use the callback function that I created. And change it to string. So that's how you get the data back. Now we done this for the name. Now I can copy this, and we want to change it for the user score as well. So I'm gonna come here, change this to user score. Now for the score, the type is gonna be int, and instead of name I want to type score. This is gonna be the same, but this is gonna be the difference because it's not a string anymore, it's an integer, so we want to parse it as an int. So snapshot value, change it to string first, and then from string to int. Okay, and now I wrote function to get both of my data points. So depending on how many data points you have, you need to write all of them for it. And then I can say that I can create another method, so public void get user data, and what I'm gonna do in here is basically call these two data points. I call these two methods I created. So there are enumerators, so you need to use coroutine. Get user name, now let's say that actually what I want to do here is that when I get the username, I also want to display it for our user. So I can create two variables in the top. So I can say that it's gonna be just a text, so name text, and then another one score text. So let's just create them. Okay, so I can declare this as public then, because it says it cannot be serialized. Okay, so we have them here. Now I'm gonna create two new text. So this one gonna be name is equals to something, and this name text. I'm gonna create another one. This one is gonna be score equals to something. So score. Let's put them down here. Actually, let's make the box a bit larger. in case the name is too big. So we have a save button. I want to create another one, call it the load button. So this is gonna load the data. And now I can attach this one. So what I want to do is that I want to get the data from our database and display it in this text field that I create, text input that I created. So I'm gonna open this back. So get username, and then all I can say is that I'm gonna pass the string name. Gonna access the name text. So it's gonna be our name is gonna be equals to name. And here we need to forgot the expression. It's gonna be like this. Yeah, and we can do the same for our, because I'm using the callback function I've created to just get the data and assign the value here as well. I can do the same thing for a score, but instead of int it's gonna be score, int, and then score text. So let's see why we're getting an error here. Oh yeah, I need to change the name here as well to score. Okay, so now it's working. And I can go back here and go to my load button. So instead of writing data, it's gonna be get user data. So now if I press play, if I click on load, it should already bring my data because the data is already saved in our database here. So if I refresh this, it says NEMA 100. So if I load this, it brought the data. Now what if I change the data? So if I say NEMA with capital this time, let's say full capital NEMA 20, and then I save it. Let's look at our database already changed, and here if I click on load, it changed the data as well. Now the only final function we can add is that right now we can change the data in here, but the problem is is re-changing all of our database values. So it's resetting the name, resetting the score, all of them. What if we want to set these value, update this value individually instead of updating all of them together each time? So for example, in this example, if I don't change the name and just only want to change the score, if I click the save, the program will automatically update both of them. So I need to have like other methods for updating user data specifically if I want to do it for a specific data point. but it's actually pretty easy. So let's just create two examples. So here we have the name and score. Update username. So it's gonna be database reference child users and then child dot so you want to say which data point I want to update, which is going to be the name, and then the set value. So here you need to say, okay, what's the new value? So I'm gonna pass the input field value, the value from the input field. So Nima text, name text, sorry. And then we can copy this and then public user score. The data point I want to change is score, and it's gonna be the score text. Okay, so now this is saved. So the way we can use it is that I can create like a new button. Let's call this update score button. So if I like go here, type update score, and I can change the method to update user score. So if I bring it up, if I press play now, if I load the data, so it says Nima 20, let's type here 100 and then click on update score. So let's check our database. Okay, it created a separate one. Did I make a mistake here? Let's just test it. So if I just type my name, let's click on save. Okay, can I delete that one? Okay. And now if I change this to like 50 and click on save, it's changed. And if I do 100 and update, it could be that actually we need to have update both of them. So if I do database and then let's update the username as well. So click on update. Oh, I know the mistake I made. So if you look at the database, it's not storing the data under the user ID anymore. And the mistake I made here is that I'm not passing the user ID. So I'm gonna need to say child user ID dot child user ID. And this should fix the problem. So I can delete these because they don't have any identifier and it's gonna cause problem in our database, so we don't know whose data this belongs to. So update score, so I don't need that, I can delete that. So let's test it again. So I'm gonna load the data. It says Nima and the score value is 50. I'm gonna put 100, update score, and the score got updated. So if I load it again, the value changed. And for the name, we can just create a separate button, and this one, put it here. This is gonna be update name, and let's fix the name as well. Update name, and change the name to update username. So now if I press play, let me put my database here next to it so you can see it live. Okay, it's not scaling well, so I'm gonna try to like have both of them. So right now it's Nemo 100. Let's load them. So I'm going to change I want to update the name. So if I change it to capital and click update name, if I go back to my database, it has changed. Let's change the score to 80 and click on update score, and the score has changed too. And now I click on load, it's going to load them. So this is how you set up a database using Firebase and Unity. And it's pretty nice, works really like fast, and it doesn't have problem, so it's a good way of implementing database. And that's it for this video.